How to use table C. So let's say we are constructing a confidence interval for the true population mean mu, and we have our sample mean, x bar, plus or minus our margin of error, and let's say sigma, which is the population standard deviation, is not known. We estimate sigma with S, which is the sample standard deviation, and we divide S by the square root of n. So altogether, S divided by the square root of n is called the standard error of the sample mean. So whenever we use the standard error, we use the critical value t star instead of z star on n minus 1 degrees of freedom. So when we want to construct a confidence interval using the critical value t star, we obtain those values using the t distribution, or table C in our case. And so we have our confidence level C across the top here. We see the percentages. So let's say we are constructing a 95% confidence interval. We would use the column corresponding to 95%. But we also need to know the degrees of freedom. Now the degrees of freedom are equal to 1 less the size of our sample. So n minus 1 equals the degrees of freedom. So let's say we have a sample of size 2. That would mean we would have 1 degree of freedom. And we would look for our critical value t star along that row. And we would see that corresponding to a 95% confidence level, we would use 12.71. So our critical value t star on 1 degree of freedom would be 12.71. So just to compare that value with our critical value z star that we've been using so far, for a 95% confidence interval, that corresponds to 1.96. So we can see that it is considerably larger. The value is considerably larger for using the critical value t star, but it is more accurate when we are estimating sigma using S, the sample standard deviation. So let's say our sample is size 15, then we would have 14 degrees of freedom, and that would correspond to this row with 14 degrees of freedom. And let's say we were looking for a 99% confidence interval. That would correspond to that column with 14 degrees of freedom. So our critical value t star on 14 degrees of freedom would equal 2.977. And that's what we would use when constructing our confidence interval. So to obtain our critical values t star, we use the table C, and this is how we find them.